Thank you very much for the opportunity to come up here and speak today, and also to the speakers that have happened before me. But I think, I don't think I need to be up here telling everybody about the case that autonomous vehicles are here. I think you've heard enough about those and working through. But some of the things that we need to actually think about is, we need to look at the way in which we actually run our smart cities, or the cities that we've actually got around us. We know that we are going to be have smart cities, and they're going to continue to be smarter. And different governments all around the world actually have smart cities at different levels. And we ourselves in Australia need to decide what role we actually want to play in being that smart city, and whether we want to follow along the existing pathway of development and our infrastructure and the way we run them, or whether we actually want to start leapfrogging into the future and utilising technology to do that. So for me, I sit there and have a look at automation and think about it in terms of the opportunity, and think about how it could look there to improve our lives, our economies, and how we can actually take it and use automation to actually develop the prosperity of our nation and taking it forward. So where we are today, we can't sit back and do nothing. It's happening around us. It's how do we grasp it and where do we run from there? One of the things that I want to talk a little bit more about today is more about, obviously we've heard about some of the community benefits, the elderly, the disabled, coming through with less road accidents and things alike. But for me, it's a case of how do we actually help drive industry and move it from that point forward? I think everybody can say technology, automation has actually driven quite a significant amount of productivity, efficiencies, greater opportunities within our environment, improved safety, and also going through into the creation of business. But one thing that I wanted to talk about as well is there's that misnomer in the room that's also thinking about the fear of the loss of jobs. You bring in robots, you bring in automation, you bring in those sorts of things, and it really comes about that people start thinking about the loss of jobs, the loss of people. How do we actually get to the point of having, and where do we go with people and with jobs going forward? So I'd like to talk a little bit about an example, and it'll be relevant to a number of people in the room. The boom of mining. When you actually sit there and have a look at where we came from with mining and the development that actually happened in that whole decade that's just gone, it really was a case of there was a boom. So Asia was really needing the product, and there needed to be a response around the world. If everybody continued to look at doing things exactly the same way that it always has been done, you would actually end up with a world that it would be really tough and difficult, and it'd be spread and sparse everywhere, trying to actually keep up with where the need is. So what you've got here is the Pilbara. There were not enough planes to get all the people up there to have the growth that was up there in the mining industry. There were not enough houses. There were people that didn't want to live that FIFO life and work through all of that as well. So automation was actually key to grasping for Australia that opportunity to actually have a bigger business here. So it increased our market and increased our actual opportunities, increased jobs all around. So when you're sitting here and thinking of it from an industry perspective, automation is one of those opportunities to create wealth for us. One thing that I'd like to sit here and have a talk about is obviously when you start thinking about agriculture, and you start thinking about where is the next opportunity for automation to come through. And listening to Peter Damon and talking about the truck and what that actually means, and the tractor and the automation of that. Again, people sit here and are concerned more about how do we do this? What are the job losses? How does that actually work? If we turn that on its head and sit there and say, well, if you think about the remoteness, the isolation, the lack of access to infrastructure, the lack of people to drive the trucks, all those sorts of things, automation itself becomes a necessity for us to be able to grasp that opportunity. And when we're sitting here today looking at Asia, particularly from the ag industry, which I've just chosen for today, we actually currently feed only 2% of those people in Asia. So we know it's all growing in the population, and they're looking to actually change the way they're eating more to a Western diet. The demand for the product from Australia or from any other Western country is on the increase. Do we in Australia, currently feeding only 2% of Asia, actually have that opportunity to grasp that industry for Australia? Can we do what we did in mining? And that's where I put out to everybody. Do we actually need to utilise automation, technology, those sorts of things, to actually bring that opportunity into Australia? And so when you start thinking of it from that angle, why aren't we actually doing more of the prototypes and trying to bring the trucks up and work those through? So then you also look at, are we ready? Are we actually looking at what we need to do? And are we, as the people of Australia, the government bodies, the industry representatives, actually sitting here preparing ourselves for making a better Australia and really driving for that prosperity going through? So to date, automation in cars and others has been drip-fed and still in human control. Or do we take that leap and actually start to actually look at how do we take it that step further so we can actually make that leap? To date, those sorts of things have been in controlled environments, as in mining and a little bit in agriculture or within a processing facility. Automation has been in that controlled environment. But going forward, we really need to sit there and think, if we really want to grasp something like that big opportunity in agriculture, automation is going to need to be something that we actually look at on a bigger scale. Because as I said, 2% of feeding the production or the needs of Asia, 1% more is a 50% growth. So when you look at our government, what we're doing, you look at other industry bodies that are sitting here looking at the development of automation, you know, there's a few different places where we need to be working on. What is the environment that we're actually going to be running these in? Are we going to be doing the full automation, or as the video showed, all the way through to the absolute smarts to get the efficiencies that are actually recognised out there as possible? Are we developing the tech, or who actually designs that? And back to the regulation and legislation and where we're actually headed with that. So I leave with this audience, if we actually really are out there to grasp the opportunity for Australia and really drive where we could take our industry and jobs and the prosperity for Australia, we need to get more support behind the automation. Thank you very much.